Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here and to be the somewhat master of ceremonies for this occasion. We're meeting at a kind of a significant moment in terms of American politics. The President and the Republican Party generally have been enduring a very difficult time. Second terms for presidents often have been more difficult than their first terms, and that's turning out to be the case for this president. It's particularly a burden for him that the war in Iraq continues and continues in an unresolved condition, with no one quite certain how we are going to win it or how we are going to end it. The events following Hurricane Katrina, the events at Walter Reed Hospital, and now currently the events at the Justice Department have added to the difficulties facing the administration. And we are now also, I think, beginning to see a transition among Republicans as they look ahead to next year's election. An election in which they have many more seats at stake in the Senate than the Democrats do, and uncertainty on the Republican side about who will lead the party into that 08 election. There are some restiveness among the conservatives in the base of the party, and as we all know, they are trailing the Democrats in the public opinion polls. Democrats, by comparison, seem to be riding high, but they also face significant challenges. They are still adjusting to the responsibilities that they won in the midterm election and attempting to deal with an ambitious agenda, confronting very narrow majorities in the House and Senate, and an inability to break the 60-vote margin in the Senate that's necessary for any really controversial legislation to go to the President, who still wields the veto pen. I think from what Democrats are telling me that some of their constituents at home have a hard time understanding the mathematics that they are dealing with on Capitol Hill, and wonder why, after winning the election, they can't just put their program into effect. And that pressure is, I think, particularly being felt from the parts of the party that would like to see the Democrats in Congress bring the war to an immediate or very quick close. And the Democrats, like the Republicans, have no idea who will be leading their ticket in the next presidential campaign. One thing that both parties have to think about at this moment is that the possibility of continued gridlock in Washington could set the stage for an independent or third party candidate to pop into the race in 2008. And the names of Michael Bloomberg and Chuck Hagel are talked about frequently, playing that role. To discuss this and other interesting questions, we have two really distinguished leaders of the opposing party, Senator Orrin of Utah and Representative Rahm Emanuel of Illinois. Senator Hatch is the former chairman of the Judiciary Committee, a member of the Finance, Health, Education, and Labor Committees. His hand has been felt heavily on every Supreme Court nomination, every Medicare bill, every health care bill, every education bill that has moved into Congress in recent years. Senator Hatch. Rahm Emanuel, a former assistant to President Clinton, represents part of the city of Chicago. He was the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in the last Congress and is credited with a major part in giving them the majority in the House of Representatives. As a reward for that effort and for his diligence in legislative work, he has become the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, a key member of Speaker Pelosi's leadership team. We are going to have a conversation here for the next few minutes, and then we are going to turn to you for your questions for Senator Hatch and Representative Emanuel. Let me start with the name that is most in the news at the moment, that of Alberto Gonzalez, and ask you, Senator Hatch, tell us where the Attorney General is as of today.
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be with you, Dave, and I'm honored to be with Rahm Emanuel, even though Chuck Schumer tells me that he was the one really responsible for taking over both the House and the Senate. we all know how effective Rahm was. But, you know, we are going to have the Chief of Staff, former Chief of Staff of the Justice Department, of the Attorney General, testify tomorrow. He used to work with me when I was chairman of the committee, and of course, the very fine young man who had been caught up in this. And frankly, General Gonzalez will be before the committee, I think around the 17th of April is the date. The question is, what will Kyle Sampson have to say about this? And of course, we've had a run politically by those on the other side. Of course, I understand in the House that Chairman Conyers has hired one of the major law firms here in this town, the price upwards of $250,000, to assist in this investigation, where there doesn't appear to be any crime committed, but it certainly was not handled well. If the Justice Department had just said to these 8 people, look, you served well, we appreciate your service, but we want to replace you with somebody, give another person an opportunity, I don't think anything would have been said. But when Naldi showed up, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States showed up and said that there were questions about performance, then that irritated the 8 people, as you can imagine, and of course we've had nothing but a fiasco ever since. And I have to say that Democrats in this process have interpreted political very broadly and performance very narrowly. The Justice Department and the White House, they've determined political very narrowly and performance very broadly. So you can see the difference here, and I think it's just going to have to work its way out. But I think it's kind of a, you know, tempest in a coffee pot, tempest in a coffee cup, I think, with maybe a burn here and there from the heat of the coffee. But in any event, I don't see any indication of improper conduct in the sense of criminal conduct. And there has been absolutely zero evidence that anybody was using improper politics, that is, trying to interfere with an ongoing investigation or an ongoing case. And a lot of people miss it. They think that these U.S. attorneys actually try those cases. The fact is, they are basically, in many cases, office managers who make sure that the office runs well. Some of them do try cases, but most of the time they're tried by the assistant attorneys, the U.S. attorneys. It's kind of a mess because it's been badly handled, but I suspect when we get through the hearings, we're going to find that we'll differ on the politics of it, but the country's going to go on as usual.
Tempest in a coffee pot?
And I said coffee cup.
Well, let me say this, it's only if you drink decaf, okay? Let me,
The Democrats are bringing a lot of caffeine,
remember, I'm an aspiring member of the Judiciary Committee. He is a member of the Judiciary Committee. So I have a slightly different take, and that is the senator and others would like to say this was mishandled, and that's the problem. You got a couple options here. A, they put the 93 names in a hat and pulled 7 out. And if you believe that, I got a bridge over the tightest river you can buy. That's one. 2, it was job performance. And every one of these folks, and the USA Today had it on the front page of their paper last week, was in the highest scores, whether it's on immigration, prosecution of gun crimes, or prosecution of crime in general.